I need caffeine. Hi everyone! So if you're thinking, Sam, you look like a hot mess, you are correct. So this is a mock-up for a suit set that I'm planning on making later. So this is kind of a modified mock-up for Simplicity 8461. I've had this pattern in my stash for a while, and I have some fabric that I'd really like to use for it. It's like a cream kind of pinstripe thing that I think would look really nice in suit form, and this happens to be the suit pattern I have that takes the least amount of fabric, so I will actually be able to cut everything out. Anyway, I'm going to try to keep this video short and not very informative in terms of like the making process, because I go on a rant a little bit later about something that I genuinely want people's opinions on, so I figure maybe if I keep this short, more people will watch the video and actually like get to that part and weigh in on how they feel. So if you're interested in like seeing some general ideas and some general how to do this and my general thoughts on this pattern, and if you want to see what I'm ranting about, go ahead and keep on watching. Alright, so it is 10:30 in the morning on my day off, so I'm going to go ahead and get started on this mock-up for Simplicity 8461. So my waist, I haven't measured recently, but I'm going to assume it's 30. So I'm going to cut this out on size 16 and go from there. I'm probably just going to do like the main parts of the jacket and then probably like the top half of the skirt. So actually I lied, and I will be cutting everything out on size 18 because I just measured my waist and I'm at 33 inches now, which is really frustrating and reminds me why I don't like sewing clothes anymore, and it's because it just keeps reminding me of how much weight I keep gaining despite my best efforts not to, and it's really frustrating and really makes me feel awful about myself, but I've already committed to it, so let's just keep going, okay? Okay, so it looks like for the jacket, I'm going to need pieces 1 through 11, if I'm reading this correctly. And I was looking ahead into the directions because I saw this lovely thing, which is a word that all women love to see in a pattern. It's called pocket. So I was reading ahead because I'm like, well, where's there a pocket in here? I don't see anything on here. I don't see anything in the skirt. So it turns out this piece right here, this kind of odd shaped piece, that's considered the pocket. So that was a little weird, and I wanted to point that out real quick. Let's see, for the skirt, I'm also going to need pieces 17, 18, and 19. I'm not going to mock up the dicky, mostly because I don't know if I'm going to make the dicky, but also just looking at the way that this is made, I really shouldn't need a mock-up just because it's basically like a sandwich board made out of fabric. So there's, as far as I anticipate, there's really no way to mess this up in terms of sizing because it's entirely adjustable with these ties. Also, just right off the bat, I noticed that there's only one button holding the jacket together, which is a little weird, so I don't know if there's like a hidden hook up here. I haven't read that far ahead. I'm gonna rant for a minute while I eat my feelings, because that's how I cope, by eating my feelings. Which means I gain weight because of all the candy I eat when I'm eating my feelings, and then I stress out about the fact that I'm gaining weight, which makes me stress eat. You see the problem here. Anyway, like, I just want to take a second and talk about, this is, like, is there any other hobby that, like, really forces you to take constant measurements of your body? Because in doing a hobby like this and a hobby like sewing, if you're constantly making new garments for yourself, then you're constantly taking measurements of your own body to make sure that you can fit things to the pattern, or, you know, you're constantly knowing whether you need to take things in or let things out. And like, I'm a failed ballerina, so believe me, I have understood the pressure from a very young age that you need to stay thin. And that's aside, like, no one in my family is like actually big. No one is considered straight up plus size. Like, I think I am legit one of the biggest people in my family right now, at least on my mom's side. A little bit different on my dad's side, but even then, like, they're not that much bigger than I am. Hold on. Like, the fact that I am considered plus sized, like, yes, I'm heavier than I am normally. This is the biggest I have been in about 4 years, since before I got, like, really sick and nearly starved to death from a parasite. But in what universe is this plus sized? If anything, I am statistically average. I'm even on the thinner side of statistically average. It cannot be healthy to be constantly taking your own measurements and comparing yourself to where you were, you know, last year or last month or last week even for some of us. Like, that cannot be healthy long term to have to be able to participate in this hobby, you basically need to have this hyperfixation on your weight. And I feel like that's not something I've really heard a lot of people talk about in the sewing community. I don't know if it's just because I'm new here, or if it's because maybe other people don't have this problem. Maybe other people just kind of stay the same size, and if they change, it's very gradual. And, you know, maybe people aren't like me and they're not losing and gaining 10 pounds in the span of a week. But it's just so weird because like I said, I'm a failed ballerina. I tried to be a professional dancer. Couple reasons it didn't happen, couple bad injuries. You know, when I was young enough to make it happen, I didn't want it badly enough. But one of the major things was my body, because I like doing the traditional storybook, big, pretty tutu ballets. Those are my favorite to do, but I don't have the body type for that. I've always been a little bit heavier, even when I was, you know, skinny, even when I was in high school dancing, you know, 10 hours a week and on a very incredibly strict low carb diet to try to stay thin, I was still the biggest girl in my class. You know, and I've been feeling a little bit better about myself since I kind of got out of that world, because that's something that a lot of people don't understand, that unless you've been in that specific area of ballet where you are actually trying to go professional, you are actually trying to make a career out of this, is you do need to stay thin, you do need to stay small, you do need to stay under, you know, about 130 pounds. And that's something that Americans have kind of skewed compared to anywhere else in the world. Because you go anywhere else in the world and someone says, oh yeah, I tried to be a ballerina, but I was too fat, so they kicked me out. People will be like, oh, that makes sense. That's logical. You need to be thin to be a ballerina. But here in America, we have this ideal and we have this American dream that, oh, if you believe hard enough and if you try hard enough and put yourself into it and dedicate enough of yourself into it, then you can do anything you want. You know, how dare those ballet companies send you away because you're thin or you're not thin enough? How dare those ballet companies not, you know, give you a principal role even though you're a size 12? Like, that's not how the world works. And that's not something that a lot of Americans understand, because we have this vision of the American dream and we realize, and sometimes life just doesn't work out that way. You know, I'm standing here looking at a giant pile of things I need to fix, so I think I might need to do another sipping and stitching video because this is getting like way off topic. But for now, this is something I legitimately want people's opinions on. Do you think it's healthy in this activity, in this hobby, to be constantly taking your own body measurements and to constantly have these numbers swirling around in your head? Do you think that's healthy, that long term, that you're constantly seeing how your body is changing? Because, you know, for me especially, I hate seeing that I've gained weight. And I know it doesn't seem like it as I'm eating a bag of M&Ms, but like, I've been actively trying to lose weight since April. I started gaining weight out of nowhere in April. Like, I didn't change anything. I didn't change my diet. I didn't change my exercise. If anything, I started eating healthier and eating more vegetables and more salads and started exercising more. And I just gained 20 pounds in about a month. And it stayed, and I've continuously just been going up and up and up and up. And it's really frustrating. Because I don't know why this is happening. So to take that outside problem that I'm having and have it affect something that I love to do, and I do as sort of an escape, to not have to think about the real world around me. So to have those issues of how I perceive myself affect the things that I'm doing, it's really frustrating. And am I the only person out there that does this? So if you have any opinions on this matter, whether you agree with me or if you think I'm just making a mountain out of a molehill, like, leave them in the comments below. I'm genuine. Like, I want to know, am I the only person that feels this way, or does anybody else like have these thoughts? All right, I'm out of M&Ms and my tea is ready, so I'm gonna go back to sewing now. All right, so here's all my fabric laid out. I just wanted to take a second and show you kind of how I did it. So this right here is piece 4. We have piece 2 in the corner. Then that is piece 3. Then over here is the front, piece 1, should be. This is the sleeve, piece 7. And then I'm not going to cut out this. This is the cuff, piece 9. But I just wanted to put that down there and show you that, you know, you can fit here and then you can scooch that over and definitely fit that in there. So this is all the, like, outside visible pieces. And so I have my yardstick laid out. So from here to here is 1 yard, and then also from here to the end of the fabric is 1 yard. So if you're cutting corners, you can definitely make the jacket with 2 yards of, you know, this fits in right about 2 yards of like nice outside decorative fabric. So if you're using like a really expensive piece of fabric and you want to kind of save as much as you can, if you don't have to worry about things like grain line, which even then, like the grain line is pretty straight on all of these, except for this. That's not straight grain line, that's on perpendicular. Anyway, so, you know, if you really wanted to, you could kind of spread this out over just 2 yards, you know, so with some expensive cuts of fabric, even adding another half yard can be another 10, 15 bucks. So that'll save you a little bit of money. So this is all you really need for the outside visible portions. This is all I'm going to cut out. Again, I'm not going to cut out the cuff just because I know how to do that. So I'm going to cut all of this out and piece it together. I'm probably not going to go step by step now. And I think this is 54-inch wide fabric. So on the instructions, it says you need for a size 18 about like 2.5, maybe 2 5/8 yards of fabric for 45-inch fabric. So if you decide that you want to kind of save some money and only do the outside parts on this fabric, you really only need the 2 yards because the facings you're really not going to see. So if you wanted to make the facings out of, you know, a material that kind of goes with it but might be cheaper, or maybe a solid color or some scraps you have laying around, that's totally fine, and that's honestly probably what I'm going to do. We'll see when we get there. But yeah, so this is all you really need. So here are all my pieces cut out. So now I'm going to clip all the notches and make marks on all the dots and all the marks. And I'm probably just going to go ahead and use a Sharpie because this is a mock-up and I really don't care if anything really bleeds through. So after about 20 minutes of sewing peacefully, my machine all of a sudden just decided it wanted to throw a temper tantrum. So I had, you know, basically readjusted everything, took the whole thing apart, put everything back together, cleaned everything. I have so much dust, you know, and it really wasn't that bad. But still, like, I took this entire thing apart and I was just about to give up, and it was awful. I was trying to figure out like how to stop this from happening, but I was having trouble figuring out which thread was which. So I decided, you know, why don't I switch this out and not use both yellow and yellow thread? So I switched it out for red and I rethreaded it, and it immediately started working perfectly. This machine just got tired of the yellow thread that it had been sewing perfectly with for the past half hour and just wanted to change. Yeah, so that's how my day's been going. I was hoping that would be a lot more satisfying than it was. So I messed up a little. I did need one more piece. It was piece 5, but that's kind of like a tiny little back piece. It's just this back piece right here that kind of links these two together, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. So as you can tell, this is kind of big. I don't know if it's big enough that I really can go down to a 16. I might be able to, but I might try just taking in these side seams a little bit and see what that does, because everything kind of fits where I need it to go. Like the side seams are right on my side. The waist is slightly higher than my natural waistline, so I think I'm going to have to drop that by about 1/2 inch. This is sitting really weird, but also I don't have like the top of these tacked or anything. So fun fact. So turns out these are actually pockets. I don't know what they're for. They seem kind of useless. I'm trying to think, because this is a 1940s pattern, so I'm trying to think like what a 1940s lady would need. So maybe this is for like a handkerchief, or maybe like a single flower hanging out here, or a pocket watch. I don't entirely know what the use of having a pocket way up here is, but I don't know. So let me do the sleeves real quick and see how that changes the fit in the shoulders. Because the 40s did have these big shoulders. It was to balance out the big hairstyle. It's a whole thing. So I'm going to put the sleeves on real quick and try to ease this in, and then see what I can do in terms of fit. Because I think all I would really need to do is drop the waistline a little bit and then maybe take in these side seams. And then I think I might be good. So hopefully you can see this better than the last clip, but here it is with the sleeves. I really messed up here. Ignore that. But I did it right on the side. So we're good there. Here's what it looks like. The sleeves are really big and really boxy, so I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try to take the side seams up both on the jacket. Actually, like, this fits kind of well over the hips. It's just the waist that's obnoxiously huge. Also, I know personally I like my arm size to be a little higher, gives me a little bit better movement. Yeah, the sleeves are kind of long, which is odd because this is like the shorter version because when you have the cuffs on. So I can probably just straight up chop off an inch off of this and then it'll be fine. So I think what I'm going to do real quick is mock up the skirt and then put the two together to try to get an idea of how they fit, and that might kind of change how I feel about everything. Or if I absolutely hate how it looks, I'm just going to scrap the project and do something else with the fabric. So here's the skirt. So this isn't the full length. I cut off probably a good like 8 inches from the bottom just because I didn't want to waste that much material. And even though I am 5'8", I have a long torso and short little legs, so I'm never going to have to worry about cutting a skirt to be too short. It's always going to be too long. So here's kind of what it looks like. And I was thinking, so I think what I'm going to do before I try like the whole thing on, I think I'm actually going to put on my girdle. Or it's not really a girdle. It's technically a faja, which is pretty much the closest thing we have in modern day to a girdle. So when you're wearing, historic or vintage patterns or clothing, the undergarments was very important, and the undergarments you wore really affected the shape and how things draped on you and how clothes wore. So I think what I'm going to do is go put my faja on real quick and then try everything on and see how that kind of like shapes me and shapes everything around me. Alright, so here's everything together with the faja on underneath. I'm honestly just not sold on this. I think even in like the right fabric, I don't think this is going to be something flattering on me. I think there's just way too many alterations I would have to make to it, and it would eventually reach the point where it's no longer like a 40s looking pattern. And I feel like part of that was just because of what was in fashion and the difference between the 40s and 50s. So I tend to gravitate towards the fashion of the 50s because then we start to see Christian Dior's new look. It was right after wartime, so we start to see a lot of hourglass figures kind of being more glamorized. The men coming home from the war usually wanted very feminine looking women. And in the 40s, there was this huge movement towards things kind of going up and down and boxy. Mostly because of the fabric rationing at the time. So you couldn't have these big flowy skirts in the 40s, and you couldn't have super long skirts in the 40s because you only had so much fabric available to make outfits. So things kind of started to get a little bit tighter, a little more boxy, a little shorter, a little more up and down. And that's not something that really works for my body type, because also in the 40s you had a lot of fat rationing from wartime. So, people back home, they weren't getting as much fats and meats and really good high quality foods unless they grew them themselves, because everything was getting shipped off to the European and Asian theaters. So all that to say, I don't really have the ideal like slim, straight, kind of boxy body type for the 1940s. I'm more of the kind of curvy, more hourglass shape of the 50s, when people wanted a little bit more feminine styles and they wanted more of an hourglass, padded up top, padded in the hips, and then really tiny waist in the 50s. And also in the 50s, it was a time of prosperity. So people were buying all kinds of groceries, foods got fattier and richer, so people tended to gain a little bit of weight. And that's okay. So that's kind of why I feel like I gravitate towards the 50s. I haven't really delved into the 40s as much, mostly because I just get distracted by the 50s. So I think it would be interesting to eventually complete this project, but honestly, I just feel like garbage in this, and I don't really have the time or the space to do proper alterations to be able to make this fit the way I want to. So I think I'm going to put this project on the back burner, and I'm just going to pack it away and revisit it at a time when I'm a little bit more okay with how I look and a little bit more accepting of the fact that I have gained, 10 pounds in the past week. Like, literally, I joked earlier that I, gain and lose 10 pounds in a week. I'm not kidding. On Monday, I was 155, and today I'm, 166. I don't know what's going on. So I don't know if you can see from this angle, but it does kind of gape out in the back a little bit, which is kind of weird. I mean, it's nice because I got a lot of movement kind of going forward and bending over, but there's also not a whole lot of movement in the arms. That's just me nitpicking. So I know this wasn't really an instructional tutorial, so I wanted this to be kind of like a part one of making a mock-up of a big video, but I think I decided I'm not going to make the actual suit set for a while. I need to be in a better headspace to be able to do that. I really wanted to keep this kind of short so that maybe more people will see it and watch it and be able to interact, because I really do genuinely want people to like comment on how the things that I ranted earlier and how, you know, the constant body measurements and like, am I just crazy? Do people not feel this way? Or, you know, I want to know, do you think it really isn't healthy to have a hobby where you're constantly taking your own measurements and you're constantly fixating on your own measurements, and when you don't fit into one of these predetermined patterns, especially because the patterns kind of are sized off of an old style and an old method. So your pattern size is a couple sizes higher than your regular clothing size, although women's clothing sizes don't make any sense whatsoever. I'm getting off topic. So yeah, please comment below, weigh in on how you kind of feel about what I was talking about. I'm just genuinely curious. I haven't really seen a whole lot of other people talk about it, so I really just genuinely want to know. And if you want to see a little bit of a behind the scenes on some problems I was having today, go follow my Instagram at threadandneedlefish. So yeah, this is it for today. Maybe I'll sew something else. I don't know. I'm feeling kind of down about the whole thing, and I might just kind of quit. Anyway, so fun fact. Excuse me. The cat actually woke me up about 2 hours ago because she was so happy she decided she needed to get right in my face right here and just start purring as loud as she can. Anyway,